Good evening, ghoulies and ghosties and long-leggedy beasties. This is Alex, coming at you from the underworld, and welcome back to another episode of... Before we get started, I would like to wish everyone a happy Easter, and if you don't celebrate Easter, I just hope you're having a happy Sunday, or whatever it is you celebrate. And also, I know that we're still going on through the coronavirus scare, and we're still going through the self-quarantine and social distancing, so I hope you're doing well with that, and if you're feeling under the weather, I hope you feel better soon. As far as myself is concerned, I really haven't had any health scares this week, and I think the anxiety meds are working, thank God, but also at the same time, I'm doing things to keep myself preoccupied, such as I've started a garden, I've doubled up on my loom knitting, and I've also doubled up on my reading. And speaking of reading, that's why we're here to start with. And for this weekend, I'm reviewing the book The Great God Pan by author Machen. Now, I can't exactly remember when or where I first heard about this story, because I know that there was a time in my life where I kept seeing it pop up in like these top 10 lists, and I had also heard about it at horror conventions, so I can't exactly remember the first time I ever heard about it. But I did finally decide to go into this book with an open mind and a clear mind, because I did not read the synopsis whatsoever. And when I spoke to people about this story, all they would say is it was groundbreaking and it was creepy. But they never gave me any context on what to expect. And after I listened to the audiobook narration of this, I did in fact agree that it was groundbreaking for its time and it was creepy. However, I do feel that it was overhyped. Unfortunately, I don't have a print copy of The Great God Pan, but it is available in the Mega Pack collection of author Machen, so you can download that onto your e-reader. And if you just want to get the story by itself, I believe Amazon has a free ebook download of just the story. Plus, if you want to get it on audiobook, it is very cheaply priced, so you can get this before the night is over without any problem whatsoever. Now, with The Great God Pan, it takes place at Dr. Raymond's countryside home. And for like the last 20-some-odd years, he's been experimenting with transcendental meditation. Well, on this particular night, he has his assistant named Clark with him, and he reveals to Clark that he wants to explore the netherworld. But he doesn't want to actually do it himself, so he has this guinea pig by the name of Mary in his billiards room. And so what he's going to do is he's going to perform brain surgery on Mary so she can become more receptive to the spirit realm, and then he's going to use her as the tool to go over into the spirit realm and communicate for him. Well, they end up doing surgery, and it's a success, by the way, but when Mary wakes up from the surgery, she is never going to be the same again, because this has screwed her up for life. Well, we fast forward to all of these years later, and Clark is reading over a documented letter from his friend named Dr. Phillips. And in this letter, Dr. Phillips is explaining a strange case about this girl who has been going into the woods and has been staying in the woods from sunup to sundown every day. And she was an orphan as well, and her name was Helen. And she was taken in where people have kind of noticed that she's strange. Well, the thing is, with her staying all day in the woods, this was really peculiar because at that time the woods were really considered like the devil's playground. And also he notes about an eyewitness having seen Helen roll around on the ground with a half-naked man who just so happened to look like a fawn. Well, we fast forward all these years later again, and Helen has matured into a woman, and what is strange about her now is she has like all of these cases of suicide that surround her, and they're all in regards to these refined men. Well, the more that we discover what's going on here, we see that what's happening with Helen ties all the way back into the beginning of the story when Mary had communicated with the spirit realm. In Greek mythology, Pan was seen as a god who ruled over nature, pastures, shepherds, flocks, and rustic music. Also, he was considered to be the patron of sex, especially for lust and physical gratification. Because of his sexual appetites and influence, he is seen as a symbol of fertility and connected to the season of spring. Among the major and minor gods acknowledged by the Greeks, Pan is considered a minor god, but he is one of the oldest gods. And due to his ability to frighten away enemies by his shout, he is the source behind the word panic, as that word is derived from his name. Fun facts! Here's some information about author Machen, as well as some information about what inspired the great god Pan, and how people reacted to it after it was published. After its complete release in 1894, one critic said the great god Pan does at least make one believe in the devil. Yet that wasn't the worst response the great god Pan received, as it was considered to be a deeply perverted work that damaged Machen's reputation and career as an author. Other critics claimed it was too morbid and an abomination, and one critic labeled this work as too dangerous for the public. Also, the Manchester Guardian said, the most accurately and intentionally disagreeable book yet seen in English. And while The Great God Pan was shunned by critics, Oscar Wilde praised this piece, and it later went on to influence authors such as Bram Stoker, H.P. Lovecraft, Peter Straub, Stephen King, and many more. As far as inspiration is concerned, author Machen became fascinated by the occult after reading an article by Charles Dickens on alchemy. And as a child, author Machen visited the Welsh river called the Usk and its river towns such as Caerleon and Caerwent. In Caerwent, author Machen found what he called strange relics at the ruined temple of Nodens, which made a lasting impression upon him. And when writing The Great God Pan, author Machen tried to adapt the same awe, mystery, and terror that he once felt at these locations. Now that we have that out of the way, it's time to move on to the spoilers section of this video. And this is going to be where I discuss some things that could ruin the experience of this book for you if you've never read it before. So, if you wish to skip this section, just scroll down to the comments section of this video and you'll see that I have a pinned comment at the top, and that comment will have a timestamp in it, so if you were to click that timestamp, it would redirect you to the thoughts section of this video. Now, you only have 17 seconds to do this, so ready, set, go. Now that everyone has had the opportunity to click away, I just want to say that there weren't really any scenes that stood out to me in this book. Now, there were a lot of really cool ideas, but that's all they really were just ideas. And I really understand that this was written at a time where you couldn't be graphically descriptive, but at the same time, I just really wish that there would have been more to the description. Now, as far as the ideas are concerned, I really thought that the concept of Mary having to undergo brain surgery in order to contact the spirit realm, I thought that was really cool, and I thought the whole concept of the bad place was cool, such as the house that Machen wrote about on Paul Street, and I've always enjoyed the idea of the bad place because I think every city or town has that one rumored bad place that makes people just cross the street to avoid it. And the coolest concept about this story is how we see a timeline of Helen's life. And where with Rosemary's Baby, which this does have a really big Rosemary's Baby vibe to it, we see where the story doesn't progress much past the baby's infancy. And with this story, we see how Mary's offspring, known as Helen, ends up going from being a child to an adult, and the repercussions that come along with that, such as the suicides that surround Helen's life. And so that was pretty cool. Now, I do have to wonder why Machen decided to name Helen's mother Mary, because in a sense, this almost seems like a sacrilegious version of the Immaculate Conception. So that was really interesting to consider. But as all of that was said and done, there is something I do have to complain about. The ending of this was completely anticlimactic. And what I mean by that is you have where Helen commits suicide because she's backed into a corner. And I just tend to think that someone of Helen's caliber, especially being like an offspring of a god, I honestly thought that she could have connived her way out of the circumstance, or she could have, like, called down something to, you know, save her, or, you know, use one of her father's traits and just scare them the hell away. But this isn't what we received. We received human beings cornering Helen to the point where she committed suicide. And I just kind of felt like that was weak. I kind of felt like Machen didn't know how to end his story, and I really wish that there could have been a bigger bang for my buck with this. Unfortunately, the character development in this book really isn't that fleshed out. But still, you can go into this and see that Dr. Raymond is a total elitist asshole who feels entitled. And I say that because he even states that just because he rescued Mary from the gutter, he feels like he has a right to do with her whatever he wants. And granted, Mary did consent to doing the experiment with him, but I tend to think that maybe he did not tell her the fine detail of what was going to happen. And I think that if she knew exactly what was going to happen, she probably would have been like, just leave me in the gutter. I can turn some tricks to eat off the dollar menu, thank you very much. But that's not what happened. And also, we do have the character Clark, who's a total dipshit and just allows everything to go down. He doesn't even try to reason with Dr. Raymond that this is going to be something that could ruin her life, nor does he try to explain to Mary that she's in the hands of a literal quack. Theme-wise, I noticed that the Great God Pan focused on sexism, and this is seen at the beginning of the story when you have Dr. Raymond who objectifies Mary by saying that he can do whatever he wants with her because he rescued her from being homeless. And so that's a really elitist type of mentality, and also it shows where he thinks that a woman is less than him. But what's really interesting about this is we fast forward to later years where we have the character named Helen. And in contrast to Mary, Helen is everything opposite of her. Because you do have where Mary is kind of like this docile figure, but then with Helen, she is like hypersexual, she has no regards for human life whatsoever, and she has the ability to have power over more established men, or more refined men for that matter. And it's just interesting to see how the two compare, especially with how just Helen is a devil-may-care individual. Now, another theme that was really interesting with this story is how the subject of when two worlds collide come into play. And I don't only mean this by how the human interaction is with the spirit realm, because that is a main point of this story, but also to see how science and religion or spirituality can coexist if they were to meet, or how science could bring on something spiritual. So that was really interesting to see. Now, I do have a few complaints about this, and the first one is the character development was not good whatsoever. And what I mean by that is with the descriptions that I just gave of the characters in this review, that's really the extent of what you receive. It really feels like the characters are just flat and one-dimensional. There's like no second dimension to them, and they just really seem like cardboard cutouts. Another thing is, I really did not feel that Machen did a good job on building dread with his atmosphere. There was just really no sort of description to the atmosphere where it made me feel unnerved or creeped out or anything like that. So there was really no tension building with that. And as far as the scenes of horror goes, it's just indicated horror, and it's a very lightly indicated horror, and it was almost a little too light for my taste. So those are the problems, and the worst problem of all was the ending was very anticlimactic, so I was really let down with the end. But at the same time, I do understand why it was groundbreaking for its time, and I did enjoy the mystery of this story. Now, at the end of the day, I believe that the biggest thing of this is, like, its biggest novelty is how this is a story that is infamous for influencing horror authors. Overall, I simply felt like The Great God Pan was just okay. I mean, it wasn't horrible, it wasn't spectacular, it was just okay. And for anyone who is interested in going back to the roots of horror to see how certain subjects came about in modern day fiction, then yes, I would totally read this, and I would recommend it for that reason. And if you are a horror author, I think that it would be good to read just to find inspiration. But as far as having a leisurely read, or something that you think is going to be just full of action, or something that'll keep your attention, then I wouldn't really recommend this story, because my attention span did kind of float in and out of it from time to time, and I did read it about 2 or 3 times, and each time I read it I did gain something new, but I still drew the same conclusion that the story was simply just okay. On to the questions. My first question is, what is a horror book you would recommend that is focused around a god or a goddess or some type of mythical creature that's like in Greek mythology? Load up my comments on that, because I'm totally looking for horror books that are in that subgenre. My second question is, do you believe that science and religion, or science and spirituality, can coexist? And feel free to elaborate on this as much as you like, but as far as myself is concerned, I'm just going to simply say that yes, I do believe science and spirituality or religion can coexist, and I have my own reasons for that, but I won't bore you with those. But please load up the comments and elaborate on that as much as what you like, and I would be happy to see the different views on that subject. Just please be respectful to one another. That's all I really ask. And now that we have everything covered, it is time to close the video, which I would like to say thank you to Lisa G and Joseph Baylott for contributing to my Patreon account. If you would like to contribute to my Patreon as well, just go to the description section of this video and you'll see a link for my Patreon. All you have to do is just click on that, and you'll have about 2 different tier options. One is the total of $5 a month, which that will give you a shout out at the end of all of my videos. And the next one is a $10 tier, where I will give you a shout out at the end of my videos, but I'll also send you one photo once a month, and this will be a photo of some of my own photography, and it will be creepy, so I'll keep it in the vein of the horror genre. And if you're unable to contribute, no sweat whatsoever. All I hope is that you continue to return to this channel so we can just have a good time talking about horror books. And if you would like to connect with me on social media, I have links for my Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram all in the description section of this video, so feel free to hit me up on those platforms. And if you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, please subscribe and click that notifications bell, because I have tons of more book reviews coming in the near future. So until we see each other again, I hope you have a wonderful week and sweet nightmares.